I want to talk about the globalist question. Now, what are globalists? Globalists are people with a very cosmopolitan and international disposition. And they jet around the world, meeting with other globalists, doing what they consider to be very important business, very important negotiations, very important work. And it sounds like great fun. And part of it is natural. It's a natural consequence of socioeconomic status. People at the higher ends of the socioeconomic spectrum, they can play a lot of positive-sum games that are mutually beneficial. And they can do trade, they can do diplomacy and negotiations. A lot of that can be very positive-sum. And even for lower and middle classes who don't play as many positive-sum games, they're more dependent on opportunities and benefits that they don't create themselves and that they have to compete for. So that's zero-sum. It's not positive-sum. But it can be worthwhile for lower and middle classes to tolerate elites doing a lot of this globalism stuff that's mutually beneficial between them and other elites, as long as they pass some of the benefits down the socioeconomic hierarchy, and as long as they maintain class cooperation and loyalty. And so you can have this vertical cooperation between classes, within a kin group, and you can have this horizontal cooperation between elites of different kin groups, and you can have both, and it can all be mutually beneficial all the way around, as long as there's still this loyalty, within the kin group. And loyalty and trust and reciprocity are, evolutionarily speaking, mediated by kinship to a high degree, because kinship makes those things evolutionarily stable strategies, and it makes those things, defection against those things evolutionarily unstable strategies. And it's also mutually beneficial for elites to maintain the loyalty of the middle and lower classes of their own kin group, because that's a valuable thing to have. If you have a loyal population behind you, that provides a lot of benefits and a lot of security that you can't get in other ways, and that population will be loyal to you as long as your motives are above board and your behavior is beneficial to them. So that's great. You can have that vertical cooperation, horizontal cooperation, mutual benefit all the way around. Here's the thing, though. Lower and middle classes can't cooperate to the same extent with alien, foreign lower classes and middle classes, especially if they're being brought in to compete for the same benefits and opportunities. That's not class cooperation. That's class war. And even though it may be beneficial in the short term to elites, such as by driving down wages and increasing profits, for example, it's going to destroy the loyalty and the reciprocity between classes and result in class war. It is class war. And so there's going to be retaliatory class war from the bottom up. And, they can make that choice. They can make that choice, and some elites have. But what happens when an elite becomes treacherous and parasitic and backstabbing and attempts to sell out its own lower and middle classes? We can see this going on in real time over in England with the Anglo elites. Because these are people who have mismanaged and destroyed their own empire, and they're in the process of destroying their own nation and their own people right now. And so, no matter which way it goes, whether the English finally get fed up and kick these people out, kick out their own elites, or whether, the elites succeed and they manage to replace the English with lower trust, lower productivity, less intelligent people, less intelligent foreign underclasses, who have no natural loyalty to them, by the way. Either way, they're going to ruin England, and they're going to end up probably picking up and leaving, just because they've created such a mess for everyone, themselves included. And they're already prepared for that eventuality. They already have their offshore accounts. They already have their nests feathered in the Caribbean, on the continent, in the colonies, various other places. They're ready to pick up and leave, to become a rootless international clique, a small, rootless international clique, so to speak. And we can kind of speculate about what might happen after they do become that. Because English elites, Anglo elites are pretty distinctive people. Like, they have a distinct look about them. You can see them coming a mile away with their big buck teeth and their floppy ears that stick out from the sides of their heads. And they're, pronounced Adam's apples. And they have very distinctive Anglo names. Names like Basil Pennington Coxswaddle III. And they're probably going to preserve those because those are good in-group signals. And they are a natural in-group. I mean, Anglo elites are incredibly inbred. They're all practically related to one another. And so close kinship defines a natural in-group. And if they have shared in-group signals, like the names or whatever, they're probably going to try to maintain those. Their social statuses and social networks in group all revolve around intellectual pursuits, going to elite schools and universities. They favor intellectually demanding fields like finance and banking. A lot of them are merchants. They like science. They've made a lot of contributions to science and also to literature, drama, and the narrative arts. And so, once they go diasporic, they're probably going to have to depend even more on each other as an in-group, on these in-group signals to reinforce that in-group, and on, these social networks that revolve around intellectual pursuits. And they're fairly intelligent people. And, with their verbal facility, they'll probably be able to sweet talk their way into other countries. And, a lot of people will welcome them at first because they have money. They seem like respectable people. They can be very persuasive. And a lot of people will probably welcome them at first, but that's probably not a great idea. I mean, look at the disloyalty and the treachery they've shown to their own people and to their own country. Disloyalty and treachery that'll either get them kicked out, one, or destroy their country and they'll have to pack up and leave anyway. So, if that's the kind of loyalty they've shown to their own people and to their own country, I don't think they're going to do us any better. Or I don't think they're going to do anyone else any better. So, even after they go diasporic, they're probably going to start in on the same shit anywhere they go. People are going to catch on. People are going to get mad. People are going to retaliate. They're going to start kicking them out of countries. Or worse, because you could do a lot worse. And, it's just not going to be good. And these people, these Anglo elites, they're kind of whiny and effeminate anyway. They are. I hate to generalize, but they are. And that's probably only going to get worse, once they start suffering real persecution and experiencing real retaliation for their shenanigans. They're probably going to get a lot more neurotic and a lot more paranoid. They may develop a really pronounced victim mentality. And, none of that is good. And being intellectually pretty capable, and they're probably only going to get more capable because it's going to be the dim ones that get caught and punished, right? So, they're going to continue to be very dangerous but very influential people for a very long time, even after they've destroyed England, even after they've worn out their welcome in other countries. They're probably going to continue to be very influential and very dangerous people because they have all the tools. They have the intellectual chops. They have the artistic chops. Those are probably going to only intensify. They counter-signal ethnocentrism really hard. Like, they're super into universalism and egalitarianism, but they still behave as an ethnocentric in-group. They still demonstrate a very strong in-group mating preference. And they have like a shared culture and language and history, a shared mythology. And, that's probably, that ethnocentrism is probably only going to intensify once they go diasporic and they have to rely on each other more. And, once they can profit more from from the hypocrisy gap, between what they say and what they do. And, they style themselves, they're very smug and self-righteous and sanctimonious people, but they style themselves as humanitarians. They're very proud of certain ideas that they've contributed to or popularized, like universalism, egalitarianism, democracy, human rights, women's suffrage. These are very Anglo ideas, and they're very proud of them. They don't necessarily always live up to them. I mean, they're elites, so how egalitarian can they be, really? But, they style themselves as very altruistic people, but it's not clear whether they actually believe this. There's a great movie called Breaker Morant about the Anglo-Boer War. And there's a scene in that movie where these Anglo generals are discussing geopolitics, and one of them is like, well, the Boers are being backed by the Germans, and we can't just let the Germans take over this part of Africa with its tremendous mineral riches. Because, and then a junior officer chimes in, because they lack our altruism, sir. And the senior officers just kind of, look at each other, and finally one of them, clears his throat and is like, yes, quite, they lack our altruism. And, it's clear from that exchange that, maybe this narrative is an ego-sapping thing that puffs up the more naive among them, but the ones in the know are a little bit more cynical and a little bit more astute, and, they may realize that it's just misdirection that they use to conceal their intentions or conceal the true nature of their behavior, their self-serving behavior, and maybe even to weaken the resistance of its intended victims, and to try and justify it to its intended victims. So, tremendously dangerous people. And this Anglo question is going to bedevil people all over the world, for generations to come, long after what's going on in England right now finishes playing out. And there's already plenty of evidence, historical evidence, that these people are a tremendous threat, and contemporary evidence from their ongoing activities right now, that these people are a tremendous threat to all, honest and productive and peaceful peoples around the world. And it's probably only going to get worse. Admittedly, this is pretty speculative, but it's pretty clear and it's pretty obvious, what kind of circumstances and what kind of pressures and incentives and conditions can lead to some of the outcomes I've been talking about. And so this Anglo question, or this globalist question more generally, which, can be explored through the particular case of this Anglo question. They call them the eternal Anglo. And there really is an eternal aspect to it, because it's not just these Anglos, okay? It's not these particular elites, these particular globalists, these Anglo elites. Even if we deal with them, and we must, we'll have to. And even if we, deal with these Anglo elites, there's like this template or this archetype. It's almost like it's floating out there in platonic space, because this template defines a very powerful and competitive group evolutionary strategy. So even if we settle this Anglo question, that template, that archetype is still going to be out there, and the blind forces of selection are still going to be, working to reincarnate this template in another group from another origin. And so we have to be on guard against this archetype of the eternal Anglo, not just the actual Anglo, but this archetypical eternal Anglo. And if we ever let our guard down, even for an instant, then this archetype is going to slither back up from the depths of hell, where it resides, and once again attain a physical flesh and blood incarnation, to bedevil us on earth. And so I guess the black pill is there's no final solution to the globalist question. it's an eternal archetype. It's an eternal template.